This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversation for musicians of all types and genres, a curation of expertise intended to help all musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Hey there, thanks for tuning in for another episode. If you are an indie music artist or fan, you're in the right place. Whoever you are, I appreciate you. Your listenership means everything to me. If you're interested in supporting the podcast, you can start by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, also known as iTunes. Another way you can support the podcast, if you're an indie artist, is by joining the Unstarving Musician community. As a member of the community, you'll get tips and recommendations fueled by the very expertise and experience of the many entrepreneurial music artists who've been interviewed on this podcast. And it all comes directly to your inbox. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. Go to unstarvingmusician.com to join. You can also provide support by buying a copy of my book, The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. It's my account of how I was able to perform as a drummer-vocalist for more than 15 years, as often, where, and with whom I wanted to, all while getting paid. It's available in paperback, on Kindle, and many other e-reader platforms. Go to unstarvingmusician.com/book to get your copy today. And here's a very cool new option for supporting the podcast. Register for the Profitable Musician Summit. It's an online conference that provides step-by-step action plans for making money in 32 different income streams for musicians. The event host is good friend, former Unstarving Musicians podcast guest, and founder of the female entrepreneur musician, Bree Noble. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com/profit to learn more and to register. Right. Hannah Holbrook came highly recommended by Mira Godo, who was featured in episodes 46 and 12. Hannah, whose name I butchered during our conversation, sorry Hannah, is a solo artist and member of the sister quartet SHEL, spelled SHEL. She and her sisters are considered virtuosos, and their collective tastes create an exciting eclectic sound. I encourage you to check them out at shelmusic.com. That's SHEL music.com. You can find Hannah at Hannah on the Keys on Facebook. In our conversation, we talk about her bandmate sisters, their label dealings, establishing their presence in Nashville, video projects, photographers, management, her interest and work in film scoring, her solo career, SHEL's next album, and relationships. All kinds of stuff. And bonus, you get to hear Hannah's solo track, First Flight, at the end of this episode. Her piano playing is nothing short of exquisite. Please enjoy my conversation with Hannah Holbrook. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's an honor to have you on here. I really appreciate you coming on. How did you, by the way, meet Mira Godo? That's how I found out about you.
I met her through Diana Mayer, and I know she talked to you about Moraine music a little bit in her podcast. We've been working with those folks, Diana Mayer, and also her father, Brent Mayer. Diana's our publisher, and Brent is our producer. Mira was working with them, and we all ended up at the studio one day, and she and I just hit it off, and we've been buds ever since.
That's cool. She's a really sweet girl, that Mira, and she spoke very highly of Diana and Brent. I didn't really know of them until Mira was telling a little bit of stories about them, and then I guess it was after our last conversation that I learned about you. So I said I was going to start off with this next question, but that one just popped in my head. But I did want to kind of get this one in here early, and that is to ask you about your songwriter father and just a story about him and your childhood.
I love that. My dad's name is Andrew Holbrook, and growing up, he was a singer-songwriter in Fort Collins, Colorado. That's where I'm from. I've got 3 sisters who I play music with. There are 6 kids in our family, but the 4 of us grew up kind of going to his shows around town and grew up listening to his songs. And when we started to get into double digits, we were taking music lessons, and we would come to his shows and he would ask us to sit in on a song or two here and there. And that really inspired us to perform on stage and start writing our own songs. So he definitely paved the way for us and championed us in that.
Yeah, and that little band that you play with your sisters in, SHEL, is really, I just recently became exposed to them because of my conversation with Mira, and I love what the 4 of you do. Going back to the music ed, the four of you siblings started on, did you all start on different instruments, or did you kind of go down that classic learning how to play piano first and then things kind of went from there?
I have to chuckle because I started taking lessons first and I always wanted to play piano. Like it was kind of my destiny. I just knew that was what I was going to do. So when I was 10, I started playing, and because there are so many kids in my family, and several of my sisters are pretty tenacious, I was like, this is my instrument. I claimed it. And I was like, get your own. Because if everyone was learning it, I would have never gotten to play it. So I was like, get your own. This is my thing. And so everyone kind of picked their own instrument, and Eva picked the mandolin, Sarah picked the violin, and Liza, who is the youngest, started on harp and was our little blonde harp angel. And as a result, our little quartet was called upon to play many a wedding because you got this little blonde angel harpist, and who doesn't want that at their wedding?
Right. What is she playing today? Still harp, predominantly?
So let's see. She started on the harp when she was 6, and then when she turned 13, she decided the harp was a little too light, and she switched to a drum kit. So
I love it. That's where I thought we were going with that. I'm still familiarizing myself with your sisters too, but I love that. Does she still indulge in the harp at all?
I'm hoping someday she'll pick it back up, because now I'm not so precious about the piano. I've seen her play piano in that knowledge of like kind of the melodic knowledge and a knowledge of chord function.
Mm-hmm.
She can play piano and she approaches it very naturally. I think what she learned on the harp would transfer to piano. And so I think if she picked up the harp again, that would probably come back. And she's talked about it here and there. So yeah, I kind of secretly hope someday she's going to play harp again.
Well, as a drummer and a fan of live performance and a fan of some of the same music that at least your Facebook page tells me you're fans of, I think it would be incredible if she had a harp set up on stage or in some live performance situation with SHEL and moved over from the drum set to the harp for a song. It would blow people's minds. It would totally blow people's minds.
Oh, yeah. I would love that.
What genre of music did your dad play?
He doesn't play as much these days, but back in the day, he was kind of folk rock, I would say. Singer-songwriter, folk and rock. And I know he was influenced by classic rock quite a bit, because he would play The Who for us and Led Zeppelin and the Beatles. I remember one of the first cassettes and the first CD that I had was Beatles.
You seem too young for both of those well, maybe not the CD, but
I missed out on a lot of music in the 80s. I came at the end of the 80s, and my parents just basically, they weren't into it, so they turned the radio off during that time. And they were like, let's go back a decade. And they played 70s music for us.
What did you like out of the 80s, by the way?
Because I missed so much of the 80s, I'm trying to catch up on some of it now. I like Genesis. Like, we could put them in there, right? And
yeah.
David Bowie. Yeah, that's probably most of what I would like from the 80s. Like I said, I missed out on that decade. So so when I listen to it now, I just think this is 80s, and I don't have the nostalgia of growing up and listening to it when it was fresh and kind of groundbreaking, I guess, with all the synth stuff and those reverb drums or whatever they were doing. It's a very dated sound, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, some of it especially. So you have to do me a favor then, because I know that the four of you have an appreciation for virtuosity in music and obviously lyrics and obviously songwriting. There's a band called XTC that their later albums, their early ones are kind of rough sounding, but their later ones really, with a little bit of production, their songwriting really starts to shine. And then another band called Squeeze, which just are wonderful songwriters and great musicians. I think you'd really like them, both from the 80s. And yeah, that's my gift to you.
Okay. XTC, you said?
Yeah, and Squeeze.
I have heard of Squeeze, but I'm not familiar with their music, but I wrote them down, so
yeah, you'll have to check it out. And how many siblings are in the family?
So yeah, there are 6 of us.
Tell me they're not all girls.
There are 5 girls and 1 boy.
How old is that poor boy?
He's 34, and I will say, I think we taught him how to treat a woman well. He's happily married.
Ah, that's nice.
And I want to take some credit for that because, come on, we were there. He knows how to be around a bunch of women, and he's got 2 daughters of his own, and he just had a son about a month ago. So we're all very excited to have a nephew and another boy in the family.
That is exciting. By the way, so it looks like you, I don't know if it's the same with your 3 sisters that are in SHEL with you, but it looks like you are based in Colorado. Split your time between Colorado. Is it Fort Collins and Nashville?
Yeah, so we're primarily in Nashville now. We all moved here about a year ago,
Okay.
but we go back to Colorado as often as we can and play shows. We had a sold-out hometown show I guess it was still this month. It was a couple weeks ago. We went home, and there's a new venue called Washington's, and they fit close to 1,000 people in there. And that was one of my favorite shows because it was just the hometown energy. Everyone was so excited. Like, there's nothing like going home. So we try to do that as often as we can.
Very nice. Where do you classify SHEL as best you can within a genre or genres?
We're going with alternative pop,
Okay.
but we also have kind of some classical tendencies.
A little bit.
Acoustic Americana. Yeah. So, and we fit in the folk world too because of the harmonies, and we can go more acoustic with the instrumentation. We blend a lot of genres. And like our drummer, Liza listens to techno music and she loves pop. I'm listening to classical jazz. Well, Eva's listening to everything, but I think she's also influenced by classical and classic rock. What does Sarah listen to? Probably pop and maybe some bluegrass and singer-songwriter. So,
as I was previewing Undercover, and I think there was another piece that comes from a separate collection of tunes, but I was immediately struck by what seemed to me to be a lot of different influences kind of crashing in all at once. And it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. And I haven't gone through the back catalog yet, so I don't know how different it is, but it's really pleasant listening. And I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the things that Eliza is the drummer, yes? Liz? Liza, thank you. Looking forward to hearing the different things that she does to weave in to the music. And now that you've told me of her listening preferences or tendencies, that makes it a little more interesting. So, yeah.
Cool.
I wanted to ask you about going from, and tell me if things have changed, but it looks like at one time you were with a label, Republic Records, and are now very purposefully positioning yourself as independent. Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship with Republic and then where you're at today?
Thanks to our publisher, Diana. She's been in Nashville for years, and she's well connected, especially in the country world. When we first moved here, Nashville was really known for country when we first started coming out here, I guess. We hadn't moved here yet, but we were coming all the time. And I think Nashville is more of a melting pot now than it ever has been. Like, a lot of different music is coming from here. And a lot of folks are moving here to do music and all kinds of music. But at the time, you'd hear Nashville and you'd think country. And so we were meeting with a lot of folks in the country world, and Republic Nashville, we met with Scott Borchetta, and he started Big Machine with Taylor Swift. And then Republic Nashville is like a sister label to Big Machine. I think I have that right. And at the time, he had signed the band Perry, another sister and brother group, like another sibling group.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott loved SHEL, so he signed us. And then we did a few things together. Like, we had this big fun photo shoot in LA, and it was like the first time that I had been on an airplane. We flew out to LA for that, and we had a great time with them. And we had a lot of really good conversations and some fun brainstorming. We all made an album together. Then there was some confusion between Republic Nashville and Republic New York. And I think there was a hope that New York would take on the project, because we obviously weren't country, but to New York, we weren't like straight on pop. And so because of kind of the diversity of the music that was being created and the fact that it didn't just fit in one genre, the label situation wasn't the best for us. They loved us, but they didn't know what to do with us. And so after a year of, we had signed over our website, like they were in control of our website, doing our booking. They brought on a booking agency for that. And we had a management out in LA, and we had like all these big hitters, and everything was just, it looked like it was teed up for success. It was like, we've got all these folks on our team that should take off, but they weren't sure what to do. And so as much as we all loved working together and getting to know each other, we ended up leaving the label, and we've been independent since. And I think a lot of things changed in the industry. And so labels don't quite take on and champion and develop bands the way that they used to. I don't know too much about it because this is the only record deal that I personally have been through, but I think it worked in our favor to leave and just maintain creative control, like stay true to the music that we know we're supposed to make and not try to fit into the country world or not morph over to the pop world, but to say, hey, this is who we are, and if it doesn't fit here, that's okay. And we all parted on good terms, and it was a learning experience, and it was good.
When did you part ways?
I don't remember exactly. It's been several years, probably maybe 3 or 4.
What's the general time span of all this? Like, I'm asking, so I'm trying to get a picture on the changes that may have occurred, and maybe you were actually talking about prior to joining Republic, but when did you sign with Republic or Big Machine, whichever it was?
I don't know off the top of my head. We kind of like did that whole thing and then moved on and didn't look back.
Yeah. I mean, how long was the relationship approximately? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. It lasted a year.
So probably within 5 years, all this has happened, approximately.
Yeah.
Unless I use that old rule, however long you think it was, at double it, then it would be 10 years, but that doesn't sound right?
Not quite 10 years, but it's been a journey. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm sure. So when you mentioned the changes and the fact that labels aren't so much into the development part as they once were, is that a change that you saw from the time you joined Republic, or just something that you weren't aware had happened, and then you're in a relationship with Republic and things aren't working out? And
I feel like I probably don't know enough about it to really say.
Okay.
I'm just going to be quiet about that because I feel like I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. It's so funny to talk, and I've talked to artists of a wide range of ages. One that comes to mind, Tom Irwin, who was on a few episodes ago, is a folk indie artist or alt folk artist, and he's been playing for years. And so he's seen a lot of iterations of the industry, and he actually got caught up in a deal where had one of the members of the band Wilco producing his record. And during a time that they were actually working together, they were struggling to get the label interest that they were after. And this is from a guy with the bassist from Wilco who's been in the business for a long time also and has seen some success. And they got caught in an interesting time period of change where the labels had just, the model had changed. They weren't doing the artist development. And I know a lot of it's because they got crushed by various things like digitalization of music and various other things. But it's just kind of interesting. But I can understand, I mean, based on what I'm guessing your age bracket is, that some of it may be like while those things were the way they were, timeline-wise would be a little foggy. You and SHEL have a pretty good amount of videos that are quite nice, the few that I've taken a look at. Can you tell me about, this has probably been an evolving thing too, but you can pick a point in time anywhere you want and tell me about the production and concept development for your videos?
We are a DIY band, I guess, as much as possible. And probably the independent situation has led us in this direction. But we make the videos ourselves as much as we can. So Sarah, the violinist, does the filming and editing. And Eva, the mandolinist and lead singer, she storyboards it with Sarah, and Eva's the primary songwriter for the group too. And so she usually has a story in mind for the music videos, and she styles everyone too. She's thinking about our outfits, what kind of makeup we're going to be wearing, how we're going to do our hair. She can visualize all of that. They get together, come up with a plan, and execute it. And Liza and I kind of just, we show up and do whatever needs to be done. So some days I'm just carrying a a little tiny baby piano around. They're like, show up with the baby piano. Other days they're like, all right, Hannah, you're in charge of lunch. And then I'm just show up with the food. And that's my contribution.
I can't imagine it's just the four of you. How big of a team of volunteers or whatever are you generally putting together?
So it really varies. Some days we have a bigger team. I'll tell you, we made a video for Inner Sandman by Metallica, and we filmed that out in Alaska. We were there playing a show. It was a conference with, it's called Let Every Woman Know, and it's about cancer. And there are a lot of cancer survivors there, and they're doctors, and they get together and support women and kind of spread the word about these different kinds of cancers and create community. And so they asked us to come out and play music, and so they flew us up to Anchorage, and it was so gorgeous. We drove outside the town a little ways and filmed the music video for Inner Sandman, and that's just Eva out in the mountains and by this lake, and Sarah's filming all of it with the camera. So it was literally the two of them, and I'm like keeping the car warm so they can hop in and then jump back out because it was freezing. But some days it's just us, and then some days we'll hire a videographer so that Sarah can actually be in the film.
Yeah, so she's generally directing what's happening as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Nice collaboration. Just because I know nothing about it, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe somebody else deals with all these things for you, but when you record something like Enter Sandman by another artist, how do you go through the requirements to get what I assume is required permission to do so?
So this is all stuff that our publisher works out. Thankfully, I haven't had to do that because that stuff can take time if you don't know what you're doing.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I know you can license it somehow.
Ah.
And maybe you pay a certain fee to be able to record it and put it on your album. And I do know that it's tricky to place a Metallica song in like a commercial, say, or a TV show or something. And I don't know that they actually let people do that, because we've had some folks try and license our cover, but they can't get permission from Metallica. And so it's like, we paid the fee to be able to put the song on a CD, but then to take it a step further and use it to promote something, to promote a product, you have to jump through different hoops for that. That stuff we don't have control over because we didn't write that song. So. Oh,
yeah, and I would imagine it varies by song, by artist, and I would think that most artists, I'm just sort of imagining with Metallica, they probably have very opinionated about anything their stuff is associated with, and then whether or not they even care to spend any time trying to figure out if they want to let a piece used by your band or someone else's band use on some sort of thing that they may or may not know about or even care about. That's interesting. Okay. That was informative, even though I realized you made me aware that your publisher deals with all of it for you. So, do you girls also do your own photography? Or, well, I know you have some contributors, but who is your primary photographer?
Let me see if I can track down the names while we're sitting here. We've got a couple folks that we work with. Liza actually did the photography for our last album.
Undercover?
Let me think if I've got all this right. Undercover's a montage. It's like it's a collage.
Yes.
That Eva put together.
Okay.
But the album before that, which is called Just Crazy Enough,
yes,
which we actually co-produced that with Brent Mayer and Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics.
Okay, yeah.
That album, Liza took the pictures for it. She just set up a camera and put it on a timer and made sure the lighting was right and had all of us stand in front of it, and she captured the images for that album. She's done that a few times. So sometimes we use pictures that she gets. And I should tell you that our mom is a visual artist, and I think that's why Sarah can do videography and Eva can style everyone in storyboard and Liza can be a photographer. There's a musical side from our dad, and then there's like this visual artistic side from our mom. So that comes in pretty handy.
What did you say? She's a visual what?
She's a visual artist.
In what capacity? What type of work has she done or does she do?
She does a lot of different things, but growing up, she was always drawing, sketching things. She'd be painting, or she'd be using pastels, or sometimes watercolors. I think mostly now she's into fabric and she quilts. Like she makes these gorgeous quilts And fun fact, she made one for the lead singer for Alabama Shakes.
Nice.
So Brittany has one of my mom's lovely quilts. Yeah. But sorry, I got sidetracked from the photographers we use. And there's a woman named Taylor Ballantyne, and she's in New York. She does a lot of photography for, I think, probably models and athletes and musicians as well. But Taylor Ballantyne, she's done several photos for us that we've used as promo photos. So we probably have her on our website, and I don't think we've used any for album covers, but we've got Anthony Scarlatti. He did the photo for our first album. And then we've got Art Heffron out of Colorado, and the live shots are from him.
Wow, a whole team of people.
Yeah, they're all amazing.
Clearly, I asked, it's something that I bring up fairly often on the podcast, because when I do the weekly or the episode promos on social, it's just always great to have nice photography of the artist to choose from, or to have them provide me with. And I have had and continue to have, a handful of people that just don't do that. Anyway, I love it. And I was just kind of curious who you worked with, and largely to figure out if it was, were you doing it internally? I mean, it makes sense to me that you hired someone, but then that you've had kind of a small roster of people that you work with is still interesting. Are you involved in management of SHEL these days?
No.
Okay.
I don't know of any bands that manage themselves unless it's like an individual artist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Taylor Swift seems to really have a game plan. Like, I think she's a businesswoman. She seems to make some pretty smart decisions for her business and be pretty involved. I guess I'd pay the bills. Like, someone's got to do that. We don't have a business manager right now, so I'm keeping track of that. Other than that, I'm writing songs and I'm composing for films when possible. That's mostly what I'm doing. I'm writing pretty much every day, and I play solo shows sometimes too. So
yeah. And I was about to ask you about that. So basically, you're kind of like operations management in a sense, or the business management, like you said. So yeah, before we got to speaking here today, I thought I wanted to ask you if your music career was all SHEL, but as I'm, again, trolling your Facebook and your Twitter, I can see that you do some other stuff. Please tell me about that.
yeah. So last year, I had a dream come true. Film scoring is kind of my ultimate goal. That's what I want to be doing when I'm not touring with my sisters. Like, I compose all the time, and melodies just like pop in my head and come out through my fingers. So I'm like, I need a place to put this stuff. And so film scoring is super fun. And last year, Travis Rice, who is a snowboarder, and he makes these amazing adventure films, and they're just really epic. Last year, he asked me to write the soundtrack for his latest film. It's called Depth Perception. So all of September, I set that whole month aside, got to drive to the studio every day and work with one of my favorite producers, multi-instrumentalists, and composers. His name is Kevin Daly. He goes by Kip Central. That's his stage name, I think. He plays bass on all of SHEL's records, and we just love him. He's like our unofficial fifth member, and he's definitely like a brother. So anyway, we got to go into the studio every day in September and write just some quirky instrumentals for this snowboarder film. And then they had a screening for it in Colorado last October. And I flew out for that, and it went so well. And I got on stage with the director and with Travis and some of the other snowboarder stars. And we all talked about our experience working on it together. And then they were on a film screening tour, so they invited me to hop on the Pacific Northwest portion of it. Mm-hmm. So I went up to Portland and Seattle and Vancouver with them, and I was blown away by their love of the sport and their love of the art too. Like, when they make the films, they're doing it to inspire their fellow snowboarders to get out in the mountains and just enjoy creation. And they're so humble about it and just easygoing. And they really appreciate their fans. I loved that about them, because Travis is pretty well known, and he got stopped like 10 times in Colorado. Like, we just went to grab some coffee, and he was getting stopped for pictures and autographs, and just people recognizing him left and right. And he was so kind and genuine with all of them. So it was pretty inspiring to me to work on a project with those guys.
That's cool. Do you have more, or do you have any film projects in the pipeline right now, or just kind of waiting for the next one?
Got a few things. No, nothing that I can talk about yet. They're just kind of on the back burner because we're working on SHEL's next album right now. So that's what we're writing for, and we'll be touring this summer as well. So if I take on another film, it'd probably be in the fall or the winter. And then I'm working on an instrumental album right now. I released one a couple years ago. It's called Late Bloomer, and it's an EP, all original piano instrumentals, and it's on Spotify. I'm not sure if it's on Apple, but it is definitely on Spotify.
You're a good singer as well. I guess you have to be in SHEL. Are you planning to do anything that features you vocally?
Yeah, that's something that I would love to do. I'm definitely writing for it right now, but not ready to not ready to have my debut as a solo singer-songwriter, wherever that's going to fit. I feel like I'm in the preparation stages for that, but that's definitely something on my radar. But I'm contributing as much as I can to SHEL right now, and SHEL's like a full-time job. So to then have the instrumental stuff's a whole other thing, and then the singer-songwriter world, that's another thing too. So I'm taking it one step at a time.
I think you should ask them for a song that you can put on your solo album that you sing on.
Okay, it's a great idea.
I was thinking of the Beatles when the band was broken up and they started doing their solo things, how some of them were helping one another on their solo projects. And I know in at least one case, John Lennon had written a song for Ringo Starr and one of his albums and featuring on each other. So why not?
Yes. Yeah, when we all start making our solo records, that would be super fun because we love playing together. So
that's great. When do you guesstimate or predict that SHEL's next album will be released?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't have a date in mind. I'm hoping we get it wrapped up by the fall, but don't hold me to it because there are some perfectionists in the group.
You heard it here first on the Unstarving Musicians podcast, everyone. The new record. Do you feel like the band, when I know you haven't done a ton of albums and EPs yet, but you're starting to get a pretty good catalog going, do you feel that your approach is fairly well planned as far as from a project management standpoint and when you think you're going to get things done and timelines and all that? And I don't know how many bands it strikes me that a lot of artists that are recording kind of just fly by the seat of their pants as far as from sort of just managing the whole of the project. But how are you and the members of SHEL in that regard?
We're writing a lot. And then when a song really, I could write 10 songs and one of them might feel like a SHEL song. And so when that happens, then we usually record that song. And so not every song that gets written gets recorded, but they all have to be written. Like sometimes you have to write 10 to write that one that works.
Sure.
We're still in the process of writing the ones that work, I guess. And so when they do work, we record them and they get used for something. Like some of them get placed in films or syncs, like TV and film stuff. Some of them just get pitched for those things, but they all kind of have their purpose. And this album hasn't felt like there's a super theme that we're shooting for. We just want it to be SHEL. We want it to be something everyone believes in and loves and that we all agree, like, this is who we are. So it's kind of coming together slowly. It hasn't been super focused into like one genre or one idea. It's going to be something that we're picking the best from everything that everyone's bringing to the table. And that takes time to get to those gems, I think. So that's what we're in the middle of, is trying to write the best songs that we can write right now and then record them and move forward from there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. You reminded me too of which you might appreciate this, and I'm going to paraphrase very badly, and I can't even remember the author's name, but I had read a quote that went something along the lines of a writer, and this would apply to anyone who's creative, but a writer has to write a lot of bad pages before any good ones come out. So you were just talking about writing 10 songs to get, which would actually be quite good. If you could, out of 10 songs,
it would be good.
If you could get 10 songs together or finish 10 songs and you have one that's great, or like makes an album, I would think that's pretty good. But it's very common.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I've written probably at least 30 since January, and only one of them seems like it's going to work for SHEL. So that that tells you something.
Well, and it's such a nice thing for you to share and admit to, because hopefully anybody who listens to the podcast or who's in your world, no matter where they are in their path, they understand that they have to write a lot to get to their best work. I think everybody starts somewhere, so it's really nice, I think, for you to share that. We're getting towards the end of our conversation, and I wanted to ask you about something a little personal. Again, trolling your Facebook and your Twitter this afternoon to think about some things that we could talk about. I noticed you had a post not too long ago about a relationship and relationships in that theme, and I was hoping that you could either share a story, talk a little bit about it. It could even be in just how it's fitting into your life now, or it can be as specific or general as you want.
I'm so curious. Was this on my personal page or was this SHEL's page? Like, I posted about a relationship?
I think it was you. I promise I'll find it, though, and I'll send it to you. I think it was on your personal one, yeah.
Okay. Cool. No, I love talking about relationships. I'm not supposed to talk about my age, but I'll just tell you, I'm not in my 20s anymore. And I am really enjoying this season of life. And I think about relationships differently now than I did when I was a teenager or when I was in my early 20s, where it was just kind of like, oh, just dating for fun or whatever. And yeah, dating can be fun, but then I'm in a place now where I'm actually like investing in a community in Nashville, and I have a lot of really good friends here who are just amazing people, really loving people, and it's been really life-giving. And I kind of realized that anytime I would go date someone, a yes to that person was a no to one of my good friends. And so I started thinking about where I'm investing my time and emotions. And if it's not a relationship that's serious or that's like where we're on like a similar page and we have similar goals, then it's going to end. And that's going to take away from like all that time I invested in it is taking away from these relationships with people who like really care about me. And so it just kind of started painting relationships and dating in a different light. And I had a relationship end about a month ago, and it was a bummer because I thought we were on the same page, and luckily we didn't date super long, but by the end of it I realized we were looking for very different things, and I was trying to create this space for honesty and vulnerability in the relationship so that there could be like real understanding and connection there. And it wasn't just like, oh, let's just kind of date for fun and see what happens. Like, that's fine too, but also we could just be friends. You know, like we can just be friends and that's fun. And so relationship to me now in my 30s is just more serious than it was in my 20s. And if it's something I'm going to invest in, that's going to take time away from music and quality relationships, and I like to make sure that it's something that's going somewhere. So.
Well, thanks for that. So you said something that reminds me of, you'll get a kick out of this or appreciate it, but talking about saying yes to relationships of a certain type means that you are saying no to maybe a friendship of another type, which kind of profound, but it sort of goes along something I've often heard and tried to remember in my own life, not just with relationships, but everything. Anytime you say yes to anything, you're saying no to something else because of your time. And I think your relationships kind of hover around that same area. Your comment on relationships hover around the same area. So, Hannah, it has been a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. I would love to feature your song First Flight at the end of the episode for people to get a little taste of some of the things that you've worked on in the past. So if that's good with you, I'll look forward to checking that out. I hope that we'll stay in touch. And if there's anything I or the podcast or anyone here that you happen to, if you ever listen to any future episodes, that we can do to help you out in your journey, please don't hesitate to contact us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I have to tell you, my name is Hannah. It's spelled like Hannah, but it's Hannah.
I know, and I heard you say it earlier, and I'm a little embarrassed for myself because I heard you say it about probably 30 minutes into the conversation, and it does look like Hannah to me, and I heard you say it, and I wanted to say, but I got into our conversation, I want to say, I'm sorry you pronounced your name Hannah. So Hannah, thank you, and I'm going to get it right in the introduction.
Okay, awesome. Hey, no problem. It's spelled like Hannah, so I get it. But thank you very much for having me, and thanks for the questions. I'll look forward to listening to it and sharing it.
Absolutely. Hope to talk to you again soon. Take care.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Hey, thanks again for listening. You are the reason I do this. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please tell a friend. And if you're so inclined, please leave a review. This episode was sponsored by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again, available on Amazon, and as a standalone podcast called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can also learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. Would you like to get a short email from me about once a week with expert tips and insights, musician resources, and anything else I come across that might make your artistic journey better and brighter? If you're a gigging musician or recording artist, songwriter, or touring professional, perhaps struggling to get your music out to the world, this could be the thing you need. Pop over to unstarvingmusician.com to sign up. It's free. I'll send you an occasional email, no crappy spam, and you can unsubscribe at any time. The Unstarving Musicians podcast is edited for sound and content quality by Juan Perez. The intro-outro music is Alarm Clocks, written and performed by the band Redwood. That's me on drums. Be sure to visit the show notes for this episode for links and exclusive tidbits and offers pertaining to the episode. You can find them at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast and possibly on your favorite podcast app. It depends which one you're using. Lastly, visit unstarvingmusician.com/resources for cool stuff that I personally use and or recommend to my fellow musicians and artistic types. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.